This is Justin.
And this is Haley. You're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize the conversations around money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom.
Girl, you are killing it. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God.
Hi, Toasties. Welcome to The Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we are so glad to have this conversation with you today. You guys, this episode is super dope, but it's super long, so you might want to chunk it out into two pieces. We don't want to waste any more time, so we're going to jump right into our interview with Allie. We hope you enjoy. What's going on, you guys? Today we are sitting down with Allie. She is a Sonoma County educator that worked with Haley at Haley's first teaching job. Allie is still there. Allie, how long have you been at that site, actually?
This is my 5th year, actually.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, it's really weird to think about the fact that I've been teaching for 5 years now almost. I still feel like I'm like the 23-year-old that like finished grad school or whatever. But yeah, it's been really exciting. Big changes this year. Actually, I got moved from 3rd grade to 6th grade, which was like my worst nightmare in the entire world. But it's been like the most positive experience, mostly because I've had these students before.
That's awesome.
So I don't have a leg up because I've got a relationship with them. So yeah, 5 years.
Cool. So that means then I guess if you're in 6th grade now,
Yes, you're thinking
that
right.
means, yeah, so Haley's first class at this school is now with you. Wow. So awesome. Teacher is probably enjoying her winter break. I love it. Good.
For sure. Yeah, they were my second class, and I will say they gave me a run for my money, and then I passed them on to Haley.
And then they came back.
Yeah, I didn't have enough the first time. I really, truly, like, I adore these kids. I think that they are just the most special group. I think that the more effort a teacher puts into, right, like understanding their students and helping them through their trauma, because like we know, right, we live in an area where, half of the town is like relatively like affluent and privileged, and then we've got the other half of town that definitely, is a minority and struggles a lot more, is like below, the median income and like poverty line. And that just comes with different struggles with teaching. And I think that these kids, like, I don't know, they've got a piece of me. I think the more like effort you put into a group of kids, the more attached you become. And I'm really excited that I get to see them over Zoom, I guess.
That's cool.
So, every day. The ones that show up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I wasn't a teacher yet when Haley had that first class. And I remember like the first few months were really hard. But the more and more that she began to like pour into them and just love them through it all, you're so right. Like by the end of the year, like April, May, like these kids had her heart hooked. And it was a difficult group, but I mean, by the end, it was just really cool. I actually came into the class one day. I had jury duty and got done early and came and like hung out with all of them. And I was like, oh, they're just such sweet kids that just need a little bit of love and encouragement and positive attitudes around them. They're a really cool group. Yep. That's awesome that you get to have them a second time around.
Yeah, it's fun.
I actually thought ending that year, I'd be okay looping with this group if they wanted to move me up to 5th grade, and I ended up staying in 4th grade. But after you spend so much time, like you said, just pouring everything you have into kids that they need that, then it's like, okay, I am fully invested, so let's just do this. And you really get to know them and their families and everything about them, so I'm sure you're having fun the second time around. But yeah, winter break, you enjoy your time. Drink a glass of wine.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
Or a bottle.
For real.
So I wanted to talk to you because you and I didn't really talk about money when I worked with you. It kind of happened after I left the school. And I feel like you had some questions, like you were like, how the hell do you own a house? How are you doing these things? How did you get a forerunner? I don't understand. You had all these questions because I feel like kind of knew way more about finances than I did, but you were wondering how we were doing these things. And so we started talking, and I realized, like, oh, you really know what you're doing. Like, really have your head on straight with money. And I kind of just wonder, where did that come from? Did that come from the conversations at home when you were growing up? Or did you learn from mistakes like we did? How did that work out for you?
Well, first I want to say thank you. That's such a big compliment. Thank you for getting my stuff together with money. I feel like I've hit it. I could die tomorrow. Be happy. But honestly, it's so interesting because listening to your guys' podcast like has made me think a lot more about money and like my roots with my thoughts on money and how I spend and save. And it definitely does 100% stem from my upbringing, but not really in the way that you would necessarily think. So my parents got divorced when I was 6, and they, for lack of a better term, put each other through the ringer financially. Like they just decimated each other, and a little bit more my dad than my mom. But it just put us in a position where I have a twin sister actually and an older brother, and the three of us, it sounds like my mom, from what I found out later in life, like literally like couldn't like buy us clothes, like struggled to like put food on the table. The only thing that she wanted when they got divorced was to stay in the house that we lived in, and she got that, but had to pay my dad a bunch of money, and it just like really like basically bankrupted her. And my grandparents were sending us clothes, you know, and that kind of stuff, and helping her pay the bills. She told me actually like 3 weeks ago, I didn't know this, like she had to ask Salvation Army to like pay our electricity bill like multiple times.
Wow.
And I think that when you grow up in an environment like that, even if you don't know that you're that poor, I think that it affects like the way that you deal with money for sure. For me, it made me hoard my money. Like I was like the kid who was like, oh, I got $5 for the tooth fairy. My grandparents gave me $20 for Christmas. Like that's going away. I'm saving that. Like I don't know what I'm saving for, but like I need to save money. And what's really interesting is I have a twin sister, and she has the complete opposite. She gets money and she spends it. She's like, because I think both of us like subconsciously have this idea, like once we get money, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so for her, she's like, I need to spend it because it might disappear. And I'm like, well, shoot, I might not get more money, so I need to save my money.
That makes sense.
So I was a very diligent saver as a kid, very disciplined. So there's that part of it. And then there's the second part of that would be that my dad, I helped my dad a lot when I was older, like 14, 15. He owned a business, and I did like some of his bookkeeping and stuff, and also like helped pay his personal bills, not with my own money, like with his, but I'd like write the checks and I'd get everything in the mail, and I had like what day things were due and all that stuff like written down. I think that has like made me a like hyper organized person, because it had to be like for him kind of. And I saw like getting his bills in and paying them that he was in kind of like you guys were, so much credit card debt, like so much debt. And he is like such a frugal person, but he can't not buy something when it's a good deal. So we have like 4 sailboats. Like what? Like a sailboat? Like that's not like a small thing.
Not just one,
sale,
4.
like at Walmart.
Yeah.
Like he had like just like ridiculous amounts of like not really super cheap things, but that he got a good deal on, you know? And so I think I watched him like spend all this money like pretty frivolously because it was a good deal. And I saw the amount of debt that he was in, and I was like, God, no. Like it like made me panic, even though it had not really anything to do with me, because I was 14, 15 and was like, you know, I'm doing fine. Like I do odd jobs, I babysit, whatever. You know, I have from helping him. But it really like showed me like there's my mom who after the divorce saved everything she could. She's a nurse, and so she makes a pretty good wage. But she was so devastated from it that she like makes sure that she has 3 years of house payments in the bank. Like that's like her emergency fund, right? Is like she is like, I will never be destitute poor.
3
again.
years or
It
3
was
months?
so horrible. 3 years.
Whoa, that's a lot.
She's like, and she freaks out. She's like, oh God, if I only have 2 years worth, like that's bad, because you never know what's gonna happen. And it's so interesting having 2 like totally different parents. Maybe part of why they ended up getting divorced is the way that, you know, they obviously handle money differently. My dad charged a bunch of credit cards when my parents were married that my mom didn't know about. When they got divorced, she had to pay half of them. And she was like, how do you have $30,000 in debt on a credit card? Like, that I don't know about, you know? So I think that I grew up in this, like, two very different households, seeing two different things, but on both ends, like, very impoverished. And I think that subconsciously that has a really big effect on the way that you live your life moving forward with finances.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
So you seemed kind of shocked when Haley said that she thinks you have your stuff together. And from the stuff that Haley has told me, I'm like, damn, Allie does have her stuff together. Like, when we've talked about it, I'm like, oh, shoot, like, she's a young chick. She's doing good for herself. Like, this human being is on it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how would you rank your, like, current situation with money, your comfort level with money? Like, where would you put yourself?
It's so hard to do that without comparing myself to, like, where I think I should be. And I think I have such a weird illusion of, like, at 28, like, what should my life be like? And I think that's based off of, like, I look at other generations and I'm like, at 28, like, my parents owned a house and they were freaking, like, about to pop out a kid, right? Like, I'm not there. For all you listeners, I'm 28 and I'm single. Like, I live with roommates. You know, and I'm in the, like, currently, like, trying to buy a home, and I've saved a really sizable down payment. And I look at all those things and I talk to people and I go, oh, like, for my age and not being married, right, and having a second income, like, I am doing really well. So I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 8 or 9. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing really well, but I know that there's places that I can grow. Like, I don't know anything about investing at all. And I wish I did, and I could totally grow there. But in terms of my saving habits and my spending habits, like, I know that I'm very diligent, and I know that I am living in a way that is incredibly sustainable for the rest of my life, realistically.
That's awesome.
Assuming I don't have kids or any other major expenses, which will change
Yeah.
my life. So I'll have to adjust eventually, for sure.
Yeah, but if you set up the tools ahead of time, then you're still going to be successful, right? You'll be able to adapt with whatever those changes are and make sure that it works for you. Yeah. I think I think 8 is good. I think 8 or 9, yeah, absolutely. And you got to think, you're in California, so CalSTRS is actually one of the best retirement systems for teachers across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
They do a really good job handling it. It's really for lack of a better word, it's really confident, meaning that, like, it's not something that's going to out of nowhere, like, poof, disappear. Right? Like, you have a really good retirement system that you may not be actively investing in, but it comes out of your paycheck and somebody's managing in that for teachers, so it's working.
Okay, that brings me up to a question that I wanted to ask you. Or I guess it's not really a question. You had talked about retirement with me a couple times, and I forgot if it was a 520. No, that's for kids. 403B? Is that what you had? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
You had mentioned that you have that on top of the normal teacher pension.
Oh, you're absolutely at a 9.
She's
okay.
Wait.
You're gonna freak out. Hold on.
And you're contributing so much money to it. So can you tell us a little bit about, like, how you got into that and why you're still doing that? And yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, I can't trust in your face, right?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
So actually one of our coworkers at the school that Haley and I both worked at, or I still work at, an older lady who's, like, closer to retirement. I remember one year was, like, freaking out about her retirement and how she was gonna have to, like, work a couple extra years, and I was like, why is this lady tripping out? Like, don't we have, like, really good retirement? And she was like, yeah, no, like, CalSTRS is, like, enough to supplement if you want to make, like, $30,000 or $40,000 a year off your retirement. And I was like, okay, well, like, after taxes, that's basically what I make right now. What do you mean that's gonna be a problem? Granted, right, I don't own a house, I don't have kids, right, like, all these other things. I also really love to travel, and obviously that's not super sustainable either. So she was like, you need to get a 403B, you need to. And I was like, okay, whatever, sure. And 2 years to do it. And actually what ended up making me do it is I very briefly dated a guy who worked for Edward Jones, and we were talking. Yeah, that was, like, the best 2 months. I got so much out of that.
Yes, girl.
Yeah, yay for dating apps. You meet people who help you in all kinds of areas.
Yes.
Yeah, but I dated this guy who worked for Edward Jones. Shout out to Joel. Thanks, Joel. And he and I had talked about it, and he's like, you really should. He's like, I know that like CalSTRS is a really great, as Justin was saying, retirement benefit, but there's nothing wrong with having extra money, especially if you can afford to be putting it in now.
Say it again, girl.
Not only that, but and it reduces your taxable income. So that was the thing, is what really pushed me to do it was I got a raise in January of this year. There was a weird, like, we got a raise halfway through the year because that's what it was negotiated as. So it kicked me into a different tax bracket. So I was getting paid more money, but my paycheck was actually smaller because of my tax. And I was like, what is this BS? And so Joel was like, I just started dating Joel, and I was talking to him about it, and he's like, if you reduce your taxable income, it'll fix that problem. So when I opened it, I just did like through Vanguard, and I like picked some random, like, I don't remember, index fund or something. I don't remember. I'm really bad at investing. I already told you that. Definitely not a 10. But I picked one that he had advised that I picked, and I started putting like $900 a month. No, I started putting $600 a month into it, and noticed that my paycheck only went down by like $300. And I was like, dude, what? I could like put way more. So I put $900 in, and my paycheck only went down by like $600. And so every year now, when I get a raise, I put the extra money into that thing. I'm putting $1,300 a month into this 403b, and just like, I'm just killing it. I'm just like, I don't really know what it's doing, but the way that the stock market works and the fund that I put it in, like, it's gaining, right? Obviously, there was a dip with that crash that happened earlier in the year because of COVID. But like, I mean, this year alone, I just looked at my pay stub this morning. I put $13,000 into a retirement account, which is like wild to me. And I know will change, right? When I have kids, obviously that reduction is going to have to I'm going to have to reduce that because I'm going to need that money. But right now I don't need it. I can live off of a basic amount of money that I started living off of when I started teaching, right? And Haley, and you both know, a teaching salary is tiny when you first start. But if you can learn to live off of that, and I think that that's part of what's made me so successful, or made me feel successful, is that I figured out what I can live off of, and anything I get on top of that just goes somewhere to be saved for later. And so that's made a huge difference with my retirement. I mean, in savings this year, I've put like upward of 20 grand into savings, right? Like, I just am shoveling money wherever I can shovel it so that for later, right? Or for buying a house or whatever.
That's so good.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're a podcast listener, but there's a podcast called The Budget Teacher, and he is a former math teacher who quit his job. His wife's a Spanish teacher. He quit his job he actually quit in May, and he's going to pursue financial coaching for a year because they are able to live off of his wife's salary because they've been able to clean up some stuff and, live off of a lower means. And it's a podcast that I love listening to as a teacher because I get a lot of really good teacher advice for finances. And they've recently had this guy on who is like the 403b guru. He started this company called 403b Wise, and it was just so interesting hearing him talk about 403bs and 457s, which are another option. It really is, in teaching at least, we're not exposed to those options unless somebody wants to actually truly help us. What we get is people from outside companies who set up appointments by schedule, and you come in, and they'll talk to us for 30 minutes and try and sort something out. And we really don't even know what the hell we just did. And we need people who have done it before to help us. So that's cool that you had that.
Yeah, we've had so many people in the last 5 years that I've been at the school. I've been at come in as like, yeah, we're trying to help you set up your 403b, and you get the scammy vibe from them. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you my money.
I'm giving you
right?
anything.
Right, like, here, yeah, let me give you my $13,000 a year or whatever, and you could just steal it. I mean, I know that there's protection, so that's probably not going to happen, but I'm like so paranoid about my money. Like, I don't want to give to someone I don't know, which actually, funny enough, a different person that I dated, I get a lot of help from the people that I dated.
Love it. Milk it. Absolutely.
But this guy that I dated in college actually became a like teacher pension specific investor, and he works in the Bay Area. And the last couple of years he's been talking, he's like, Allie, like, let me help you. And I've been like, that feels really weird to mix like whatever happened when we were in college with like my money right now. But we've like remained really steady friends. And actually a couple months ago, I was like, you know what, dude? Yes, because like, I mean, it's been years and years of us like being friends after, you know, we recovered from our breakup and stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, I know that you love and care about me, and like, you're not going to, I mean, we talked about it, I was like, are you going to steal my money? Like, that's the only question that I have. And he was like, what on earth? And I was like, that's my biggest fear, is that someone's just going to rob me blind. And like all this hard work, quote unquote, that I tried to do, because I don't know anything about investing and I need help. And he does. And like, his portfolio is incredible. You know, he's got a really, really low rate. That was one thing for me. I was like, why would I pay someone to invest? Like, that feels really weird, to pay someone to do things with my money. But realistically, that's going to get me more money than me trying to do it by myself, because I know I don't have the knowledge. So I did at the end of this year, like, put my trust in him. Let's hope he doesn't steal my money. He will. I know he will. But that's a financial decision that was really hard for me to make, but I'm really glad that I made, because I think that there are so many of those scammy people, and I really truly wanted help, but it's so hard to figure out who's actually trying to help you and who's going to just do it for profit and really not get you to the place that you want to be.
Absolutely.
When we first started our debt-free journey, we started listening to the Dave Ramsey podcast, and he speaks a lot on, you know, investing in things that you understand and making sure that you know what you're doing with your money, and that the people that you're working with are explaining things in a way that you understand. So all of these listeners, all three of you guys who are listening, if you are like Allie, where you want to invest money and you don't know what to do, just make sure you find a financial advisor who is like a teacher, going to explain things to you, where you feel like, okay, I trust you, I trust what you are going to do with the money, and I understand what it's doing. And then someone that also is going to let you ask as many questions as you want. You know, that's your money, so you should be able to feel comfortable with what you're doing with it and where it goes and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, transparency is key for sure.
You had that experience a little bit when opening up the Roth IRA. Who did you work with? Was it a financial advisor?
Yeah, when I opened the Roth IRA from the inheritance alley, that was one smart thing I did, was open a Roth, and that was with the advisor from Redwood Credit Union, and she doesn't get paid based off of my success. Redwood Credit Union pays her a yearly salary to help their customers be successful. And so it was really cool, because when I sat down with her, you know, she was like, listen, like, your success, like, I don't make more money off of you doing well. I want to make sure that you do well so that Redwood Credit Union keeps me here, because I like my job. And it was great. You know, she explained everything really well, was very clear in what she was, you know, what she thought was the best choice for our money. And I spent, you know, probably 2-3 hours with her as she explained it all. And to this day, like, I'm super comfortable reaching out to her to ask her questions, to get help and advice. She was a rock star. And the fund that I've used for my Roth IRA has been really successful. I think it's like sitting at like 10%. It's around 10%. So it's making money.
That's awesome.
I mean, it recovered. I think most accounts recovered pretty well from, you know, the start of the year with the COVID dip. But it's been nice. But yeah, I was really comfortable talking to her. It was really good. Yeah, it was a good situation to get in.
You're putting money into something you want to feel like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
and like, the person has your best interest at heart, right? Like, I think that that's the hardest part, is that we all know, like, when it comes to money, that there are some people who are just in it for themselves, and then other people who genuinely want to help other people, right? I mean, like, even what you guys are doing, right? Like, you guys are doing this because you just genuinely want to help other people, right? You want to get those conversations started. You want to make sure that people have knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that there's sometimes the line gets blurred, and some people are so good at hiding like their bad intentions and making them look like good intentions. So it's definitely good, I think, to do your research. And I didn't know that, Justin. I think that's really cool that the local bank, because I know Redwood Credit Union is pretty local, right? That they offer that, but they also make sure that it's a person that's not doesn't have like stake in the game quite as much,
Yeah,
you know.
for sure. Yeah,
like
it was
getting
really
a commission
interesting.
or something.
Yeah, exactly. It would have felt much sleazier, but yeah, it was nice.
So I kind of want to shift things a little bit. When you first started, when we first started our podcast, you were listening, and there were a couple times where you're like, "Hey, we listened to the podcast this week, and it has sparked a conversation with you and some friends." And I kind of just wanted to ask you about how often you speak with friends and family now about money, and has that changed since you started listening to the podcast?
I talk, well, obviously I'm not seeing a lot of people right now because of COVID, but I actually just did my weekly walk with my one person in my bubble that's not like my boyfriend and his roommates, and talked to her about how it's coming on here, and we just had a conversation about like finances and money mistakes, and we talked quite a bit. She's in the process of trying to buy a tiny home, and so I think that I've just become more comfortable in general talking with friends about money. I've always been really comfortable talking with my family about it. My mom has always been really transparent, and she actually, we've had years and years of conversations about money, because I actually have spent a lot of time being really restrictive with my money. I think because of all of this like subconscious stuff when I was growing up, to the point where it was actually damaging like relationships with people when I was younger. I definitely had the mindset of, I just told my friends this today. One of my best friends from college would invite me to do stuff like, say, go to a baseball game. And in my brain, I'd go, okay, well, I really love her, but like baseball's like, okay, I guess. But the ticket's going to cost this much. The parking's going to cost this much. The food's going to cost this much. Oh, it's going to be like $120 a day. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. And I did that so much and avoided doing things so much because they costed money that it really affected my relationships with people. And finally, my mom was like, you need to stop being stingy. Like, you need to like figure out a way to balance, right? Like the fun things in your life and your relationships and your need to feel financially secure. Granted, being stingy really helped me because I graduated college with only $4,000 in debt, and that's only because I thought I needed to take out a loan for my dorms, and I didn't. I literally paid it off the day that I graduated.
Wow, that is awesome. Allie, I know you have a few siblings. Do you talk to them about money and finance?
But my brother and I talk about finances a lot. He's made similar mistakes to you guys. He pulled out his retirement to pay off his truck because he has student loan debt, he has truck debt. He lives in Tahoe and he has this beautiful life in the mountains, but he works in a service industry town and he makes $14 an hour and can't afford to pay his student loans, right? And to pay his car payment. And he wanted a truck. I mean, it's so similar. Like he wanted what was it? Not a Tundra. What's the truck that Tacoma. He really wanted a Tacoma. And so he bought one, but that's like $35,000, right? On top of his student loan debt. And it just, I mean, he felt like he was drowning. And so he and I have talked a lot about finances. And actually the main conversations that sparked were between me and my partner. So I'm in a relatively new-ish relationship. I mean, it's been about a year, but a lot of the stuff that I listened to, you know, he and I would just sit around and drink a glass of wine and talk about like, hey, you know, how do you feel about joining bank accounts, Justin? Man, that one, you were like, so you should trust each other, right? Like you should combine your finances. Those conversations were so good to have with him because I am such a money conscious person that I'm not about to tie myself financially to someone who does not have similar thoughts to me and who doesn't have similar saving practices. And like, yeah, okay, like he'll buy a couple things here and there that I'm like, okay, that's a little frivolous, but like you're allowed to spend $80 on CBD products if you want to. It's legal here. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Fully legal in California.
Like if that's what you want, if you want that fancy CBD, you know, balm because you want it, like you should have the means to do that. It's when you're racking up the credit card debt and doing that kind of stuff that's not a thing that would work for me. So that's really, I mean, it's really mostly just sparked conversations with my partner. But I'm a really open person. So I've, for the most part, have usually had an okay time talking to people about stuff like that. primarily because I don't have much of a filter.
I love that you guys are talking about that, because if
Yeah,
your
that's
relationship does progress and get more serious down the road, you want to know where you guys stand with money and debt and credit cards and loans and all of that, because money is the number one reason for divorce in America.
I mean, shoot, you've potentially witnessed it firsthand if
Yeah.
that was the falling out for your parents.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you can protect that going into it, or realize like, whoa, this is definitely not someone I want to get tangled up with, because I handle things one way and this person handles things completely differently, then you find that out beforehand. And so that's really smart. I'm so glad that you guys are having that conversation, and I'm happy this podcast is creating that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that I think that it would have naturally come up, but I think it started with the "What are millennials killing?" thing that you guys say, which I thought, please do another one. I love that.
Dude, some of them were. I felt triggered when they were like killing normal names. I was like, yeah, don't come knocking on my front door because I got a bone to pick with whoever wrote this.
But like, he at the time was in the beer industry, so like that was really funny, because you guys were talking about, we live in wine country, right? And craft beers all over the place here. But that was like how I started talking to him about like having listened, because it sometimes it like feels a little silly, which is part of the stigma, right? Talking about money is like inappropriate. And I was like, yeah, I'm listening to a podcast about like finances, and it's done by like a girl I used to work with and her husband, and it like felt kind of weird to say. And I was like, why does this feel weird to say? Like, yeah, I'm listening to a podcast about finances, and like, come at me.
Yes.
I mean, not that he would have, but it allowed, that one was so fun that I was like, yeah, like I thought this was really funny. Like, let's talk about it. And then every single week I was like, hey, like I listened to the podcast again. Like, do you want to talk about this week's topic? And it was a really cool way to like initiate those conversations that I for sure think we would have had otherwise, but it made it so much easier and so much more like organic, as opposed to like, hey, let's have this like deal breaker conversation.
Yeah, for real.
Like those are awkward. Nobody wants to have a deal breaker conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's a really great way to like just spark that without like the serious and awkwardness. Obviously it's a serious topic, but you guys just created such a really, easy way to have those conversations.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think it's cool too, because like, I mean, putting myself in the shoes of like, I hope this isn't offensive.
You can't offend me.
If Haley had the like financial acumen that you had when I met Haley, I could have learned a lot from her.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, if we have a partner who maybe doesn't have the same financial literacy as us, or the same comfortability when it comes to finances, even if we're not super comfortable with the choices that they make, we can learn from them and start to kind of clean up our own act. And that's huge, right? Like you said, you don't want to just sit down and be like, deal breaker time, like let's lay it all out, right? You want to be able to like dip your toes into it and slowly like help shape somebody. Because I don't think that's a conversation that's like, I'm going to pull you on to my religion, right? Like that's so deeply rooted. Like financial literacy isn't always taught. So if we have a partner who's willing to teach us that stuff or help us through that stuff, it can really set up relationships to be successful.
Yeah. Or the other way around. Someone that's really, really willing to listen and grow. And I think the biggest thing is look in the mirror and face their own, habits and their own thoughts about money. Because if you can't realize how you think about money, you're never going to make progress.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. It's interesting though, you're talking about the financial literacy, right? And people like learning and talking. My boyfriend, he grew up with a dad that literally is like an investor, like for a job, right? Like he does portfolios, I believe, for people. And he has like had this wealth of knowledge his whole life from just like dinner table conversations with his dad, whereas like I just learned everything from like watching the train wreck that was my parents, and being like, oh God, no thanks. Like here's my own trauma about money, and that's gonna make me scared, to death to do anything with my money. And I think that was like really what it was. And I finally just learned slowly as an adult, like, no, you don't have to be terrified to spend your money. I mean, I think about my second year teaching, I was like, I'm a big girl. I got a big girl paycheck. I had purchased all my own vehicles for myself my whole life, but they were always like, like secondhand. My little like green Honda, it was so reliable. I bought it for some older lady for like $7,000. It had 90,000 miles on it. Like, it was a beautiful car, worked perfectly. And this girl over here, this is like the only financial thing that I'm like, God, why? This almost makes me want to dock myself down to like a 6. Worked out okay, but I went and I bought a brand new Subaru, and I was like, I want Bluetooth in my car. Like, I was like, literally, I was like, I want better AC and I want Bluetooth in my car. I'm sick of this stupid tape deck that only works half the time. I want to listen to my jams. And my car was so reliable and so safe and got amazing gas mileage. And I love my Subaru with every fiber of my being. Like, if Subaru sponsored me, I'd quit my job tomorrow because I love my job. Like, I've driven that thing and back. This summer I drove to Missouri and back and slept out of it. Like, that thing is like my baby. But I spent $27,000 on a car and had a car payment every month because I wanted Bluetooth. Like, it's just like, when I say that out loud, I'm like, what the, like, everything else in your life, you're like, no, I can't go to a baseball game, but you're going to go spend $27,000? Like, it just, like, doesn't make any sense.
That's great.
And so, in hindsight, I'm really glad that I did it. And like, I literally, when I bought my car, could have purchased it outright. I had that much money in the bank, but I was like, I cannot spend $7,000. Which, like, when I say that, is also like, then why did I spend $27,000? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not gonna drop all that cash right now. I'm gonna drop it over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And I paid it off early. Like, I, really got into the, like, I have extra money every month, let me throw it at my car payment. And I got my car paid off instead of, I think I got a 5-year loan, I paid it off in like 2.5. But part of how I was able to do that is 2 weeks after I bought my brand new car, didn't even have license plates on it, someone rear-ended me going 30 miles an hour. And I ended up getting like $15,000 from the settlement because like my back got kind of effed up, and there was like $8,000 worth of damage done to my car. So now it's really depreciated, right? Like, total depreciating asset. And so I was like, I need to pay this sucker off because it's not worth what my loan is at all anymore. And so that was like really scary, right? I know Subarus hold their value, but because it's a car and I was driving it and someone hit me, I had this massive loan that wasn't even what my car was worth. And so most of the money from the settlement I threw at it, and then just like, paycheck after paycheck, I tried to put extra money towards it, especially after the first year when I saw that 2 of my car payments for the year paid interest. 2 months out of the entire year were just paying towards the interest. I was like, this is absurd. Like, and my interest rate was like 2.5% or something, but still, like, that's the one thing. Like, I'm not going to move myself to a 6 because it works out just fine. But I think that, like, out of everything, I look at that and I'm like, okay, I told my boyfriend, I'm never buying a new car again. And the only reason I literally have ever thought about that is from listening to your guys' podcast. And that's one of the conversations that he and I have had. It's like, I love my car, but I would not do that again. Yeah. And it's not about having the nicest things for me. Like, I want a reliable car. Like, I'm going to spend good money, so that my car's not breaking down all the time. But you do not need to drive a car off the lot brand new, right? And paying interest when I had the money up front, like, in hindsight, is really dumb. It's like super stupid.
Yeah, but you're right, that does happen. If people have those tendencies where like, I can't drop this massive amount, I'd rather take the monthly payment, and then we start to get into looking at interest and we're like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Well, because it's like, do I pay $27,000 right now, or do I pay $250 or $300 a month? Oh, that's much more feasible, right? Well, I was just talking to my mom about this because she's looking into she needs a new car right now. Hers has broken down and she needs to get not a brand new car, but she needs to switch vehicles. And we've just been trying to figure out the best option for her. And she's unfortunately one of the types of people, and she knows this. We've had this conversation. I think she's always going to have a car payment. I don't think she ever really plans on paying off a car and owning it. So I would never really recommend this to anybody. But in my mom's situation where she constantly is buying new cars and she always has a payment every single month and she needs something reliable and she doesn't want a lot of miles, I was like, you are the perfect candidate to lease a car for like $200 a month, because you're always going to have a payment. If you're going to pay the car off, then that's the worst way ever to buy a car, or you're renting it.
Mm-hmm.
But in her situation, she fully acknowledges she wants newer cars with the warranties, with everything, and she's always going to have payments. So I was like, I mean, really,
yeah,
it's not a good idea, but it might be a better situation for where you're at. And yeah, buying new cars is a bad idea. But I'm glad that you know that now. Good job.
Yeah, new to me. It's gonna be new to me is what
I love
it's gonna
it.
be.
New to me.
I also do not intend to buy a new car. Like when I was car shopping, I mean, this was like 3-4 years ago. And I'm not, again, single. I mean, not married type of single. Not having a baby anytime soon, but I was looking for cars that I was like, I want this to be a me car and I want this to be a mom car. Like, I'm not repurchasing a vehicle when I become a mom. I'm not doing that. Like, part of it is because of how I was car shopping. I was like, God, this is what my parents used to spend on cars. And I know it's not, right? Obviously, inflation, like, whatever. But I just, like, I can't imagine after spending all this time trying to pay off my car, then being like, oh, yeah, now that I've had a baby, I need to now get a brand new vehicle because I didn't prepare for having a baby and my car can't fit my child. Like,
yeah.
We spent.
And I know that people do that.
Well, we getting the 4Runner. We got like the luxury 4Runner with a third row, and most people don't even know that 4Runners have a third row. You can pay a lot extra and get one that does. Because I want like 3 or 4 kids, and want them close in age. They're gonna be in car seats. We owned the car for like a year and a half before we ended up selling it. Oh, maybe almost 2 years. And then, had one child. We definitely didn't need...
Yeah, you're like, unless I had triplets. Like,
I mean, but I was like, this is going to be my forever mom car. We're going to have... we're going to have this car for 20 years.
Oh, if we were not in debt, I would
drive it.
Yeah, now that we have
nice.
the Suburban, I'm like, I am never going back. I love this car. I thought I could never love something as much as I love that 4Runner, but the Suburban is huge and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Although yesterday I was driving into Kaiser and I literally like go and turn and then I had to back up because I was about to hit all the curbs because the thing is such a tank.
Yeah, it's like driving a boat.
It really is. It's like towing a boat with a motorhome. Like,
yeah.
All right, so Justin, I want to tell you how I got out of college.
That's the next thing written down. Like, we got to figure out this student loan
Student
stuff.
loans. How the hell did you do that?
Okay, I don't know if this has changed, but when I went to college in 2010, so old, you only had to declare one of your parents on FAFSA, and it was just the parent that was declaring you on their taxes, right? So my mom, like I said, was a registered nurse, and at that point had gotten remarried, and so between her and my stepdad, there's zero way that I would have been able to get financial aid. And my parents obviously didn't save to pay for me to go to college because they were too busy decimating each other financially. So I knew that I didn't have like any funds to go to college, right? And I have pretty wealthy grandparents, and I had actually gotten into Santa Clara University and really wanted to go there. But it was a private school and it was more expensive, and they basically told me, we'll pay for you to go, but you need to change your major to something that makes more money. And I refused to.
We're not going to pay for you to go to college if you're going to be a broke-ass teacher.
So I love my grandparents dearly. And actually, I was majoring in psychology because I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. I had no idea. I actually, that's not true. I wanted to be a sex ed teacher. I did not tell my grandparents that. There's no way. But I also realized that wasn't a job. So I was just in school for like human development and psychology and kind of like figuring out what I was going to maybe do with my life. But they told me I have always been to them the like really smart one. My grandfather grew up in an orphanage and is an amazing, you want to talk about financial success story, grew up in an orphanage, joined the military in World War II, worked on a Navy ship, married my grandma, came home. They now own multiple homes in South San Francisco, used to own an apartment building, and make like $250,000 a year on dividends from stocks. Like, they are balling. And he started with literally nothing. So I got to them a lot in terms of finances, and they look up to me a lot in terms of my education. My grandfather doesn't have past like an 8th grade education. So that was part of why they were willing to pay for me to go to school, but they wanted me to do something that was more prestigious than psychology. They were like, why don't you be a doctor? I was like, because I don't want to do that. Like, I don't really like science enough for that, and I'm good at math. It doesn't mean I want to do it. Like,
Yep.
and so I told them no. And so my options were Davis or Berkeley. And I looked at the financial package, and that was honestly like, felt like a really silly thing to be thinking about. But like, I again was really money conscious. And I was like, I'm not going to go to a school where I'm going to have to pay a ridiculous amount of money to go to school. And because I had put my dad on my FAFSA, he at the time was only making like $45,000 a year doing like executive director work for a nonprofit. And so I got essentially like a full ride each year as long as he maintained that really low salary. So he like didn't marry my stepmom. Still hasn't married my stepmom. I used to think I was the reason. I think what's going on. They've been dating for like 17 years. So obviously they're committed. But I used to think I was the problem, and apparently I wasn't.
You're holding him back.
Yeah, I was like, thanks, Dad, for letting me get through. That's what he used to joke. He's like, I didn't pay for college, but I paid for your college in not having any money. And so I claimed him every year, and so I got Pell Grants, and that covered pretty much all my tuition except for my first year. I wanted to be bougie and have my own room in the dorms. So I had a single, except for that was like $5,000 more than a normal room. And so that was the only thing I had to take loans out for. I think it was like an extra $4,500. So I had a $4,500 loan. I knew I wasn't going to have to pay it back until I graduated. So I just saved all of college. And the same grandparents who wanted me to change my major, I tried working my freshman year to try to earn extra money to pay for my sorority. That's the other thing I would probably not do again. $400 a quarter is like a ridiculous amount of money 3 times a year. That's so much money that I spent paying to be in a sorority. And I paid it out of pocket because no one in my family was going to do that for me. I made some of the best friends, but still unsure as to whether or not that amount of money was worth it. Anyway, sorry. So they offered to help me pay my rent because I tried working and I started to like not get as good of grades, and I'd always been known as someone who got like straight A's, sometimes B's. And so they were like, hey, we'll pay your rent for you. So you don't have to worry about working. You can at least live. So they paid my rent, and my grandparents, my mom's parents. And that, I think, above anything else, is the reason why I was able to save as much as I did during college. I did start working my sophomore year. I taught gymnastics, and then ended up over the course of the next 3 years, not only teaching gymnastics, but simultaneously working in 2 or 3 different labs, one of which ended up paying me. So I was working multiple jobs throughout college in order to save so that when I graduated, I paid off my loans in full. And that was really cool. Even cooler, and I feel like this is a really good thing for people to know if they're going to go into teaching, is if you receive Pell Grants at all in college, if you apply to a teaching credential program within 18 months and if you start a teaching credential program within 18 months of last getting a Pell Grant, you will get your Pell Grant in full again.
Oh.
So when I went to Davis for my master's program, so I took a gap year and then I went to Davis for my master's credential. My entire first credential year was completely paid for.
Wow.
So another $15,000 of tuition that I would have had to pay, I didn't have to pay because I had received Pell Grants. Thank you, Dad.
Seriously.
Throughout college. So it's the same as USF. It's like a credential master's hybrid, and it's 18 months. So it's the first year you do all of your credential and then 2 master's classes, and then the second 6 months while you're teaching full time, theoretically, you do the other 2 master's classes. And so those were each like $2,000 or something. And because I was able to not work and just do my credential year, I got a 4.0, and that allowed me to get a scholarship for my master's portion. So I only paid like $1,200 total for my credential and my master's. And
That's
I, to
that's
this day,
huge.
am so thankful. I'm so thankful because, like you guys have said, the stipend for a master's is like stupid little.
Yeah.
Like it's like 100 after taxes. It's what, like $80 a month on your paycheck. Like you have to work so many years to pay off any sort of higher education as a teacher, and I think that that's so silly, and like that doesn't inspire anybody, right, to want to get a master's and to go back to school. I think that's like really poor business practice. And I know education is a business. You can tell based on how politicians treat it.
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful. I think that I've been really fortunate. And I think that not only from my own money saving habits, but also just like the grace of my grandparents, and the fact that I had the information and knew I need to put my dad on my FAFSA, not my mom, right? I know that like some random little, I don't even remember who told me to reapply for a Pell Grant. If I didn't know that, right, I would have had to take out one for my credential.
Yeah.
And so just those small tidbits of information that have been so helpful and instrumental in me being able to be successful financially. Just very thankful for.
That's
rad.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the living aspect, what your grandparents did with the rent is huge,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I ended up taking out most of my loans for. My whole entire financial aid package for 5 years at Sonoma State University was about $98,000. That's about how much I took out. Most of it was grants. I left with $30,000 worth of debt. So that means I took $30,000 out over the course of the 5 years to just live off of.
Yeah.
All my tuition was paid for by the grants because,
Yeah.
like you said, I put my mom on. My parents divorced when I was a sophomore in college, so there was low income because it was just one parent. So it was completely paid for, and I was working too. So I totally could have paid for the living, but I chose not to. And that's what so many people get themselves in trouble with just subsidizing the living, or thinking like, oh, this is free money. Like straight up, I'm getting all this money, let's just live off of it. I mean, I know so many people that would get their financial aid checks in the bank and it'd be like, payday, let's go shopping. And so dangerous later on.
Well, and that's like so not me. I mean, I just am I don't buy new things for myself. I did when I started teaching. I was like, okay, I can't wear like all this stuff from Forever 21 that I wore all of college. That's probably not appropriate. Anyone who went to college in the last 20 years, no, 10 maybe, knows what I'm talking about. You just have a closet full of Forever 21. Even if you didn't go to college, I guess. But anyway, so I just don't, like, I went to college with all the clothes I've been wearing all of high school. Like, I'm so low maintenance, right? I don't wear makeup. Like, I think that it's really easy for me to not spend money because of how low maintenance I am. And I don't know if it's because I'm cheap, quote unquote, like, or just because I just don't, right? Like, I just don't care about those things. But now, like I only buy things if they're nice because I don't want to have to buy them multiple times, right? Like, there's so much information out there about, like, yes, if you buy a higher quality product up front, it's going to cost you more money, but down the line, it's going to cost you way less money, right? Like, if I buy nice, warm winter boots, I don't have to buy boots every year because those boots are going to last me until my feet grow, which isn't going to happen until I get pregnant, I've heard.
Yeah.
But for the foreseeable future, like, yeah, those boots were like $120. But side note, I work part-time at REI.
Yes,
so
that's
any of the things.
That's another thing. I was like, wait till we talk to Allie. She literally has all this money that she puts in retirement, and she has a second job. And I'm pretty sure it's just to subsidize her travel with all of her fun hiking stuff. But
yeah, Haley was like, she works at REI, and I was like, oh, that's cool. She's like, she likes to do that stuff, so it's kind of a perk for her.
And that's the thing is, like, maybe I am so cheap that I was like, I'm getting a second job so I can take that whole paycheck and spend it on stuff that's half off, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I have these, like, a bunch of my activewear. Like, I'm really active, like, gym goer, and I don't have to buy expensive activewear anymore. Well, I do buy expensive activewear, but it's not expensive for me because I work at a place that sells high quality activewear and I get a discount, right? So, like, okay, yeah, the 4 hours I have to work every 2 weeks, is like a lot. I don't need the money, right? But like the discount itself is worth the money.
Yeah.
Like that is money, right? I'm saving I'm starting to get old, and when I run, I need different shoes. And so instead of buying $130 running shoes, I get them for $40, right?
so
Like
dope.
that alone is worth it. I just have learned to be really frugal. And I think that there's so much stigma with like, being frugal. My boyfriend called me cheap the other day and almost killed him. I was like, no, I am frugal. And he was like, no, you're
Was
cheap.
he inviting you to a
Okay,
Giants game or?
I'm gonna explain why. We were driving home on Christmas Eve from looking at Christmas lights, and there's this house around the corner that always puts free stuff out, and usually it's like pretty dumpy, so like, don't look at it. But there was like a really nice barbecue, and I've been wanting a barbecue, but I'm not about to buy a barbecue because I don't barbecue enough. So we drove by it, and I was like, oh, barbecue, and I like looked at it. And then he looked at me and he was like, do you want to go back and look at the barbecue? And I was like, no, it's fine. And he's like, yes, you do. So he turned around and we went back and I got out and I got my flashlight and I was looking at it and he was like, you are so cheap. It's Christmas Eve and you are standing on the side of the road looking at a barbecue. And I was like,
Did you get it?
it's a nice barbecue. I didn't. I was like, I'll go back in the morning and double check that all the things are there. I went back in the morning and someone had taken it.
Doesn't REI sell barbecues?
No,
Oh, okay.
not like a grill.
Okay.
I wanted like a.
Gotcha.
I want to try to be a man.
Yeah, I guess REI's got like camping stoves and stuff, right? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I got one of those, but
That is too
Oh.
funny.
I just want to
Yeah,
say, Allie, you are totally like a 9.75 because you're totally going to be a millionaire. And right now, this sounds like crazy, but by this, just from your 403b alone and your stirs, I would like to do the math.
Yeah, I'll look
Here,
at
let's pause real fast.
Bang. Okay, so if you just do 12,000 a year and it's only giving you 7% and it's just until you're 50, then you'll have like the math checks out to about 588,000 by then. Let's instead say you're going to work until you're 55. So we'll give you 27
Cool.
years. And we'll say that your investment return is actually going to be 10%, and we'll up the contribution to 13,000 per year, which is even still low because I mean you probably put, well, I guess no, you around that. So if we that's so dope. So if it's 27 years at 10% return, 13,000 per year, when you're 55, you'll have 1.5 million in the bank.
Not even including
that's
stirs.
not even.
And that's not even stirs. That's just your 403b.
So you're literally like, you are going to be a millionaire in a matter
that's
of
sick.
like 30 years. Do you have any debt right now?
Okay, so I paid off my car this summer. I was so excited. I probably shouldn't say this. I used my stimulus check. That
No,
counts.
Yes, it does.
You
Yeah,
say
and
that,
it's
girl.
your taxes. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Yes, you should, because our taxes are going to have to pay all this back. Like, that's your money.
know,
You want to
I
spend it on
know.
Jordans, if you want to spend it on an electric scooter for your kids, if you want to go to freaking French Laundry like Gavin Newsom, I don't care. Do it. Treat yourself, damn it. This world is too difficult to stress about what you do with stimulus money.
Oh my God.
Anyways,
Well, I paid off my car.
yes.
So I paid off my car with that, and that was my last debt, which has been amazing because that car payment every month was about $400.
Wow.
So I opened a Roth, and I've been now putting that
What?
money in a Roth. And so
Okay, you
I'm
really
done.
are like 9.8. Like, we'll give you the 0.2 because you bought a brand new Subaru, but like you're up there.
What? Okay, so you have
Um,
the normal California pensions program, whatever, that's automatically set up for teachers. We can't opt in, opt out. You're just automatically set up with that. You have that. You have a 403b that you are contributing how much monthly?
1,300.
$1,300 monthly.
Okay, that's a lot.
But that doesn't count the 2 months over the summer. And I think that's something, obviously that's not that big of a deal, but it's not something I realized until today when I looked at my pay stub and I was like, that doesn't make sense. $1,300 over an entire year should be more than $13,000. I was like, oh yeah, teachers, we don't get paid in the summer. I don't get 2 paychecks.
Gotcha.
So obviously it didn't get pulled out of those.
And you have a Roth. How much are you putting in the
Yeah.
Roth monthly? The whole car payment?
500.
Well, that's all you can do. The Roth's gonna be 6,000.
Oh,
a
yeah,
year,
that's right.
Yeah.
So
So you're maxing out your
Yeah,
Roth.
so
you're
Allie,
crushing it.
you
Yeah.
are legit
You are crushing it.
9.99.
Hey.
Yeah.
Woo!
Seriously, that's legit.
But I will say, I think that it's really important to note that, like, I mean, there's a certain amount of like privilege, right, that I've had with like having grandparents who are willing to pay my rent, right? And I will say that, like, for people who know that they have family that could help, like, my suggestion is ask. Like, I remember the day I called my grandparents to ask for help paying my rent. And the only reason that I did was because my brother had asked. My brother went to Sonoma State and is in a lot of debt too, I said earlier. But he was very frivolous with his money and spent it on things that he like should not have. Like, I know that there's certain things that, like, yeah, you need, but he was like recreating with it. And so he needed my grandparents' help to pay his rent because he was blowing all of his other money on other stuff. But I was just like, I don't want to fail school. This is like one thing, and I need this help. And so I called, and I remember like sitting on the phone and being so anxious, like, you don't need help, like, you want help, right? And I was trying to convince myself that, like, I didn't need to do this, and it was shameful to do it, and asking for money is not appropriate, and blah blah blah. And I was like, no, like, this is something that I knew in my heart that was going to help me for the rest of my life if I asked. And the worst case scenario, they would have said no, and then I would have had to figure it out, right? And I could have figured it out. Like, I also, like, I made it so they didn't have to pay a lot of rent. I lived with freaking 4 girls in a house, right? Like, we split rent. Like, I didn't have to pay that much. I paid $600, I think, for rent each month, all of college, because I lived in like a freaking concrete house with 4 other girls and maggots on the kitchen floor sometimes and cockroaches. Like, it was nasty. But I was like, I can't be like, hey, grandma and grandpa, you want to pay $1,200 a month? I mean, live in some like bougie apartment. Like, it was hard to ask for money, but if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been in the situation that I am now. And obviously not everyone has the ability to do that, but I do think that if you are in a position to ask, like, it doesn't hurt, right? And oftentimes, like, my grandparents are so happy that they could do that for me. And now, like, I mean, I would have done this no matter what, but like, they're actively dying right now, and I'm like spending multiple weekends a month sometimes driving down and like taking care of them. And I would have done that whether or not they'd help me pay my rent. But it's like, my relationship with them is so much better because I don't have to stress out about money. I have the time to, like, yeah, grandma, I bought this car that I now can use to drive down, and I can see you, and I can help take care of you. And like, all of the success that I had has been because of their support. And I'm very thankful for them. And I think that money is a really scary thing to talk about and to ask for, but I think that there are people in our lives who want to help. You guys have talked about, the generosity that you are going to give when you guys have the means to, right? Like, I think that people who have a lot of money oftentimes want to share that money,
Yeah.
and they want to share that love, and they don't want the people around them to suffer, right? They don't want them to stress out. And so, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, the worst that can happen is someone says no, and then you gotta put your big girl pants on and figure it out by yourself.
There you
Yeah.
go. That's
I love
awesome.
that.
You're doing a really good job in honoring their legacy. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's all about, my whole life really has been about trying to make both sets of my grandparents proud. I think, I don't know about you guys, but I really look up to both sets of my grandparents. I think they come from a generation of working so hard, and I do think that they maybe financially had a little bit easier than we did. Like, the houses that my grandparents owned, they paid like $53,000 for in South San Francisco. Like, you literally can't buy you can't buy anything here for $53,000.
You can buy a car.
On a tree.
Yeah, you can buy a Subaru that you can sleep in as you drive to Missouri. Exactly. You've listened to the podcast. Our famous final question is, I say famous, you know what I mean?
All 3 people that listen know the
everybody,
question.
they know that this is famous. We ask people, if you could put a stop sign in the way of somebody who's about to make a financial decision, what would you stop somebody from doing?
Think about if it's a want versus a need, and compare that to what your current financial situation is. Like I think about, like, me buying my Subaru, like, that was a want, not a need. And like, I was in a financial place to do that. I still, again, don't think that I necessarily should have, but I think that we so often confuse things as needs when they really are just a want. And I think that that gets us in so much trouble. I'd be like, stop, just think for like 2 seconds. Like, do you want this or do you need this? And there's so little that we really, really, truly need, right? To like be happy and to survive. And, you know, you guys have said so many times, like, why are you spending all this money on things to impress people that like you don't even necessarily like? And I think that that's what it is like we think we need it in order to be socially accepted or, you know, be happy. But the things that have made me the happiest, you know, I spent $100 on my cat when I adopted her. She's one of the things that makes me the happiest in my whole life, right? I mean, I have to feed her and whatever, but I think that just stopping to think about like what it is that we really need and the way those things are going to serve us and why we're buying them, right? Like what is the intent behind this? Is this for me or is this for someone else and not in a like gift giving kind of way?
Seriously.
You know? Yeah, I think just be introspective. I'm really big on introspection. I think that that's gotten me really far in my life, is just taking a minute to think about really any decision before making it.
Yeah, I think that's a good mention too of just being content with life and being content with what we've got and doing the best with what we have and letting that be enough. I shouldn't say making that be enough, but letting that be enough. That's something obviously that you and I have had to learn.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, Allie. You are awesome. I'm so glad that I finally got to meet you, because Haley's like, you're not even gonna believe, like, this girl that I used to work with, she's crushing it. And I mean, both of us know how little teachers get paid. So you are doing a phenomenal job at 28. Like, you're killing it, and we're super super happy that you're able to come on and join us today.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for sticking around. We know it was long, but we had a blast talking to Allie. Don't forget, if you want to come on and chat with us, feel free to reach us on Instagram, or you can hit us up on Twitter, or you can literally just shoot us an email. If you have our email, you can check our website, whatever you need to do to get a hold of us. That's going to do it for this episode of The Price of Avocado Toast. As always, we are so thankful to have this conversation with you guys and so thankful to be part of this community. As always, happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties. Thank you for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend. We'd love to continue building our listening community.
If you're interested in speaking more with a financial coach, hit up our coach Ryan at MeFinanciallyFree on Instagram. Use the promo code HELP50 in the consultation notes section to receive 50% off.